Hi, welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And today's August 2nd,
That's
2016.
Right. That's right.
And I'll just make a note, personal note, that my dear old dad, who's been gone for a long time, was born this day 99 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So.
Oh, happy birthday, dear old dad. What was his name?
Ed, just like my brother.
Ah, he's a junior.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, this is the day after the traditional Midsummer City Council meeting, the only meeting of the summer that the Cambridge City Council has.
Well, June 27th is technically the summer, but that was the last one. Technically, but
oh, you're right. That is the summer. You're absolutely right.
But they don't basically meet for a month.
Yeah, they go about 5 weeks between them for this, and then an even bigger lapse until the next one.
You're right.
So the next meeting is not until September 12th.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be some interesting city council subcommittee meetings.
There's a lot of them.
So,
yeah,
I mean, that's what's supposed to happen.
Hearings
you
and
catch up on stuff like that. So anyway, I was actually at that meeting for a good chunk of last night.
And I watched or looked at it before they got the sound, but I did try to pay attention for at least a few hours. Actually, they went into executive session about 10 o'clock.
Something that's right. I was at I was sitting.
You were there?
Of
course you were there.
Up in the peanut, well, it's not quite a peanut gallery because it actually takes place at the...
This was at the CAF, the media cafeteria.
Yeah, Cambridge, no, not media cafeteria, but the CRLS Henrietta Addle's meeting room where the school committee usually meets.
Right, I thought that's the media caf they call it.
No, media cafeteria is actually the one that's sort of, you go around the bend over toward Cambridge Street.
Oh, so I probably wouldn't have been able to find it.
There's always people looking for it and trying to,
It was supposed to be air conditioned, and Mark McGovern complained that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
After a lot of people left, it kind of became pleasant.
Okay. A lot of hot air in the room. All right. I'll stop making jokes. Go ahead.
Right. So anyway, I was sitting back at the meeting with Gary Mello,
of course,
occasional city council candidate and general curmudgeon. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was kind of fun. A fair amount of people up there doing public comment and whatever, and it had a very long.
That was totally no audio on that.
Oh,
basically.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found it interesting.
Trees, a lot of tree stuff.
Some, usually what happens at these meetings, because there's a 5-week gap, is that the city councilors. Maybe it's different in election years as opposed to non-election years.
I bet.
During election year, they're out there campaigning and they talk to constituents and then they say, oh, here's an order I can put in, there's an order, or here's a resolution thanking so-and-so. So you'll end up with 110 city council resolutions and 95 orders or something. And it was surprisingly few. But then I realized, that's because it's an even year. And they're not actually out knocking doors.
So resolution is congratulating people and doing...
Yeah, once upon a time, they used to all be merged together, and it was one of the reforms they did around at the end of 1999.
Oh.
When Sheila Russell and Catherine Tranter-Filou had been involved in doing some modifications and picking up some good ideas from Santa Monica and some other cities around the country. That's when they instituted things like the roundtable meetings.
Oh, okay.
They changed the way they do council business around a bit. They split I think it was when they did it, they split into what you might call ceremonial resolutions and policy orders. Now, it's not really such a rigid distinction, but...
Well, wait a minute, but congratulating someone's birth of a child is very different than a policy order. It is.
Basically, I mean, so the way I just say...
I didn't realize it was the same back then.
They were all merged together. I mean, they had different effects. But they went through, right through the agenda, bang, 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 bang. And some of them were directing the city manager to do things, and other ones were saying congratulations on the birth of your baby.
I'm glad they separated them.
They did. I think it was a great idea. But amongst the policy orders, there are some things that are still sort of ceremonial, not really serious.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's vice versa. It's not a perfect distinction, but normally I would have expected for the midsummer meeting just a lot more of both. And so the councilors were kind to us all.
So what does on the table mean? Because I was very confused. There were some
That's
there were like 7 items.
This
on the
actually
table.
is something that's throughout Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
Which I know a lot about because I'm Robert.
And you follow the rules.
No. Anyway, when you can table an item and just basically sets it aside, and then it can lay on.
How is that different than charter right?
Charter right is a right that you have under state law. If there's new business, like somebody springs a city council order, or really anything that's fresh on the agenda, and if any member of the body says, "Well, I don't know about that. I haven't had time to think about that."
Yeah.
Then you can just say, "I would like to exercise my charter right to delay it to the next scheduled meeting." So in the city council, they refer to that as exercising your charter right, which is what they should say. Of course, that's not what they really say. For some, the language has morphed so in such an entertaining way. They say, "I would like to charter right that." And I think that some people were thinking that's right as in WRITE as opposed to RIGHT. They must, because when another council will say, "Didn't I charter write that one? I charter wrote that a while back." Or wasn't that charter written?
Oh, that's
interesting.
They say
that, yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's kind of weird when you see them mangle the language that way.
Well, I didn't hear them discuss one of the items, and it was actually charter righted by the person that proposed it, because he didn't want someone else to. That was the the Sunday supper one.
Yeah, anyone can.
Did I miss that? Did that get this? How did that not get discussed last night?
You're right. Actually, I think it's probably just
do they have to pick out what they want to discuss, or if something has been on the table, don't they have to address it?
No.
Oh.
No, they can leave it on the table for a while.
Ah, that's what happens.
By tradition, and it might even be in the rules, it might be one of those gray areas. If something was put on the table as a charter right matter, I think they are supposed to take it up early in the next meeting, but I don't think they're obliged to really.
Okay, they probably didn't have time.
Anyway, so the bulk of the meeting was the city manager's agenda, which was incredibly substantial.
38.
Is it 38 items?
Yeah.
Right? So usually it's around a dozen or so like that. But
but it's the end of his term coming. It was like there was a month in between and a lot of stuff. It was a waiting report. Isn't that part of it, him coming back to the council with his report on stuff?
Some of it is just that there's, the city, carries on, everything moves through, and there are grants that come through from federal government, gets passed through state agencies
replacing
and the city.
People on boards.
So there was a lot of them that were, just, here's $7,000 being allotted to such and such a thing. Various things through human services programs.
Right, the nutrition.
I always actually feel a little guilty when I'm highlighting things on the city council agenda. I almost never highlight this incredible wealth of appropriation matters and things that deal with specific things that are under the heading of the Department of Human Services programs.
Interest, maybe.
But it's actually some of the most substantial things that the city does.
$200,000 something. Well, it's also coming from federal grants.
Yeah, and it's actually an interesting story, just how incredibly generous the city really is in providing these things. I mean, that's why, one of my own personal heroes in the city administration is Ellen Semenoff, who is the head of the Department of Human Services program. I think she runs an incredibly good department, and they deliver the best services pretty efficiently.
Right.
I give her and the whole department a lot of credit. To be perfectly honest, when I'm looking at things that I find interesting, sometimes they're kind of things that are a little sort of controversial or snarky or weird.
Yeah, well, that makes for good conversation.
But I really should highlight some of the good things that the city does as well.
Yes.
So.
All right, well, I'll hold you to that.
Alrighty. So anyway, I thought maybe we could just sort of bop through a few things here.
Right.
I mean, some of these ones I just sort of put up on Civic Journal on, Thursday night, or maybe I wrote them on Sunday. I'm not sure now.
No, it was before that. I looked up.
One thing that was came back, and it'll be continued. There was a city council order, maybe a month or so. It had to be at least a month ago, probably a month and a half or 2 months ago, calling on the city administration to come up with for the municipal elections for a voter guide to the municipal elections. And I talked to some of the people of the election commission. I think they're not particularly hot to trot on the full-blown idea of what some were suggesting. I think that I think there'll be pretty much universal consensus for a better, more extensive how to vote a PR ballot,
What did he, is it still a waiting report, or did he have a?
There was a
did he have
report,
on it?
but basically what the city manager came back and said was,
I didn't read it.
I think we need to have a roundtable meeting to talk about this.
And that's the order too?
Yeah, and I think that's because the sponsors of that order originally, I think they had certain expectations, and I don't think those expectations are going to be realized.
Yeah.
And for good reason. Having run these Cambridge candidate pages for over a decade myself, what I can say is that dealing with candidates isn't always a walk in the park. You beg them for stuff, they say things, no, that's not what I really meant, back and forth, back and forth. And the other thing, too, is that, this is reality. This is to be a city publication. Candidate X puts in there, says, this is truth, this is what I believe, whatever.
It's printed maybe 3 months before,
Well, maybe not. It'll probably be a little sooner, because they could turn it around a little faster than that.
Yeah, but then they're going to mail it.
Right. But the thing is that some candidates are going to say, well, I'm the one who did such and such, or else, I would like to change the following policy. And they're going to put some things up that are, because this is politics.
Yeah.
They're going to put some things up that aren't true. And there's no real way of vetting that. What are you going to
But you don't vet your own pages.
No, I don't. But the thing is, but again, I'm not a city publication.
Exactly.
And if I was a city publication,
saying it should be fact checked, but they can't do that.
So exactly. So I think I wasn't at all surprised that whenever this topic comes up, there's a city solicitor will be there.
Yes.
Because I think there are some potential legal landmines out there.
Why? There is so much press. You have your pages. There's usually coverage in the local Chronicle, CCTV. Candidates come on. There's so many ways people can get information. There's forums.
3 years ago, for the 2013 election, I think the Cambridge Chronicle did a very, very good job. And they did a lot of, every week there was another question or two, and all the candidates gave responses. They did it for weeks and weeks. Last year, for the 2015 election, they didn't do anything.
Okay.
Now, they may have reasons, and I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm just trying to look more to the future and saying that, people like
local
me, people like CCTV, people like, and people associated
there's organizations
with
that sponsor forums, which are great, like the Green Cambridge and Mid-Cambridge Association.
And we should all be teaming up with the Cambridge Chronicle, and we should work out a plan.
Yeah.
And we should coordinate something.
I think there's so much information out there. It just isn't needed.
We can improve.
Except for what you had said about PR and explaining better that stuff.
Yeah, the city has a brochure about that, but they don't really send that out to every household.
Right, that would be helpful.
So maybe doing something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they said, okay, once the date comes when all the candidates' names are known, they could send out all the names. Names and addresses. They could even put a little picture, right? Because there's no point of view. There's no
these are the
slates
names.
Organizing and using a city publication to promote their slate. There's none of those little problematic things. So, I think something will come of this, but.
Now there was talk that they have to do a mailing to. There's a change of voting because of the Gold Star. Pool.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That would be a good opportunity to include that brochure.
Except that that's this year, and the municipal election guy would be next year. So.
Oh.
Yeah. The thing is that we've got.
And it's just presidential this year. It's not a PR
There are
election.
33 precincts and actually fewer locations because there are some locations that actually have 2 precincts voting in the same building.
Right.
So there's maybe around 30 different locations. They usually stay, but I think because of some construction projects and what have you,
it's closed.
they actually have to move some of them around. But anyway, that'll be coming.
All right,
soon.
So
that was one item right in there. One other item that I thought I'd just mention here, and I even have a little brochure to sort of say something about it. Some of this stuff is sort of civic stuff, is like probably for some people like watching paint dry. It's not thrilling, whatever, but there's some things for us infrastructure geeks that we just get totally tuned in on.
What is that related to?
So there was one here was on manager's agenda item number 11 about just getting, it was an appropriation of a grant from the Massachusetts DEP having to do with water quality management, basically to do little, what you might call opportunistic projects having to do with stormwater management. Now, if anybody's, I don't know, if you haven't walked out or been around some of the streets that shoot off of Brattle Street, they did these things, I think what do they call them? They call them biobasins. They're like these little swales, and they're planted areas.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have noticed it.
Right. Basically what they're doing is rather than just having the water run down a paved street down into the drain and see you later.
That's what I think of as stormwater management, is a drain.
Well, but actually doing some where there's porous pavement to allow some of the water to percolate into the earth.
And we're
which
doing
is pretty
that.
good and during a drought for street trees.
Absolutely.
They have other things like where there are catch basins. Instead of just being a catch basin, which is like sealed up, they have it so it can allow for some, leaching out. So the water, rather than just sitting in there, can actually leach out and get into the earth. There are actually some that are actually planted. So they're actually plants that actually will take up pollutants, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing them typically as part of big projects. Like they did this whole Huron Bay project.
So you can get this brochure through the city's Department of Public Works.
Yeah. So what is this one? It says stormwater management and green infrastructure. I got this. I was on a walk with the Cambridge Pedestrian Committee, I think. But no, actually it wasn't.
No, it was when you went to the water department, no?
No, actually this one was strangely enough, was along with the Pedestrian Committee.
Pointing out these
Yeah, and just doing that along the way,
Yeah.
So anyway, they passed some money to do just little ones. They even said, I think it's, they're going to do sort of pilot programs on Park Street, which I think is out around off Huron Avenue, out near Fresh Pond.
Where's this?
Chestnut, which is over your neck of the woods.
That's my neighborhood.
Yeah. And then the other one is Webster Avenue over Wellington, Harrington area. Toward East Cambridge. So don't be surprised if some kind of interesting curiosities appear around the curve, and where the city does some innovative things, which I think are really, really good.
Where is this?
I think the picture here on this brochure.
It's a boardwalk.
The boardwalk, that's actually out in the area where there's a man-made recreated wetland area, which is west of Alewife. And it's a stormwater retention and treatment
That is still Cambridge?
pond. That is Cambridge, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it's really neat. Let's go. Come on. All right, we're out of here.
Right.
We're going for a walk.
All right, so that's good. So learn about your stormwater
and it's interesting because there was a lot of discussion last night's meeting about some of the bad shape some of the trees are in.
Yes.
And urging people to water them and adopt a tree.
Because they have those green gator. I noticed that about a month ago, a tree right near my house. It was totally, and I looked and I said, wait a minute, I have one of those orange trees. I watered it.
Yeah, and I've always watered trees around my neighborhood and around the block in the little park. I actually hook up the water there to do it.
Nice.
But anyway, it amazes me when you're walking down the street and you see street trees basically coming out of a narrow little well up there, no way to water or air, any way to get in. You wonder how they survive at all.
Yeah.
Right. So any way the city can find interesting engineering solutions.
I think they're doing an amazing job.
They are.
Given everything that department has to do. I know I'm partial to Public Works, but I mean, infrastructure, and water management, and trash management, and buildings.
Absolutely true.
My gosh.
Out along Western Avenue, everybody took notice on the way they reconfigured the road lanes and the cycle tracks and all that. But to me, when they were first presenting it, I was the guy who was asking Owen O'Riordan. I said, so what are you doing with the sewers? What are you doing with these catch basins? So they were actually doing things where they were actually capturing water from runoff so it can percolate in to actually go into these dry wells that will support and provide water for the trees along the way. So, it's some pretty innovative stuff, and I just like that. So, moving on.
Yeah. Right? So what was?
We'll be doing 6 hours.
A lot of stuff
straight.
On bike share. Are you going to talk about that?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Hubway program system, which I believe is now expanded to, or is it 4 towns? Brookline, Somerville, Boston,
It seems to be all
Cambridge.
over. I don't know.
Well, it hasn't gone out to places like Belmont and Arlington. I think Richie Rossi, the city manager, was saying that really, to make it a really good system.
I don't know, that's interesting.
It should do that because, a
Yeah.
person could hop on a bike in Arlington, ride into
Right.
Cambridge, but they don't actually have that option right now.
Interesting.
You can get on in Cambridge and go to Boston, you can go to Brookline, you can go to Somerville.
Yeah.
Right? And there are some challenges in the system, like moving bikes around to make sure that when you show up to get a bike, that there are
There's a
some,
space.
or
Or that
when
you
you're
can-
delivering one
right.
to park it, there's a
Yeah.
place to put it.
Yes.
Right? And it is sort of breaking, the system is breaking down a bit in some places.
I
Sometimes
didn't realize
you
we
go-
were part of a contract that was.
It was with a company called Alta, and Alta is pretty much, I think, financially went into bad shape.
No, you're kidding.
Yeah, so I think it's been taken over by another company now.
All right.
They're actually putting it out to bid. But the thing is, in order to make it a more attractive option, they're basically making a 5-year contract with a couple of options for extensions on that.
So you say the idea is for us to jointly, so right now we've been doing it individually?
Well, actually, I think it was Somerville, Boston, Cambridge were doing it jointly, but they would buy their own hardware.
Oh, I see.
And then, but you could move, but it was managed by the same company.
Yeah.
So you could, you didn't have to, so
Right.
didn't have to return a Cambridge bike to Cambridge. You could leave it in Boston, et cetera. But it was interesting at the time, one of the big controversy was that there was some in the public who were horrified, that they might allow advertising on the bikes. But what's actually worked out is that since you pick up a bike in Boston, it has advertising on it. You ride it, you leave it in Cambridge. So most of the bikes around Cambridge have advertising on it anyway. So it was actually Councilor Devereaux said, let's just face reality, and maybe we should just acknowledge that the revenue that can come from allowing advertising on these bikes
I see. So Cambridge
is
could
something
get their
we should get on board with that too. Because right now only the other towns are getting the revenue, we're not.
Oh, so it's up to the town to do that? It's not part of the contract or the proposal?
Apparently. So, and Richie Rossi says, I think that's kind of what we ought to do, but the council hasn't voted or anything on it yet. But anyway, so that'll go out to bid, and then I imagine they will actually modify that. So anyway, so that was kind of interesting. A few other little things. One thing was Stephanie Pollock, who from I guess it's the
Department of Transportation?
Yeah,
Secretary?
I always forget. Isn't she like the Secretary of Environmental Affairs or something?
No, it's not. No, it's
She's
transportation
specifically
because
DOT?
she's got the
Mass
MBTA
DOT?
when the snow thing happened. It was all on.
So it was an interesting interchange. I remember over the years, whenever there was some place in the kind of the intersection between City of Cambridge and the old Metropolitan District Commission, MDC. Dealing with the MDC was just ridiculous for the most part. You just didn't get any cooperation or even acknowledgement.
DCR.
So that's much of those functions went to the Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Right.
Some of the other functions of MDC began to Department of Transportation or Mass Highway. So the fact that we got a letter from Stephanie Pollock with Mass DOT, basically, promising good cooperation on the development of the Grand Junction path.
Is that what that? Okay,
was actually viewed as a great, even though it's a token kind of statement, it was viewed as sort of a big step forward.
Which number was that? What agenda?
I was manager's agenda item number 29 and 30.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we also got a nice update, just a good chronology from Iram Farouk from CDD about the whole chronology of the Grand Junction Railway and how we got to where we are. So that was kind of interesting. Another thing I have to say, in my snarky way, I was pretty entertained by was a report came back. There had been early this year big public testimony about divestment from the Cambridge retirement system, their funds, in any company that had any involvement with nuclear weapons support or systems or anything. They passed that naturally. But the problem is that the Cambridge Retirement Board doesn't really work for the city so much, or even the city council. They work for the pensioners. And they have some legal obligations under state law.
State laws.
Yeah, that pretty much says what they can and can't do. And I don't think that was sitting well with at least a councilor or two who were.
Plus, they have to hire a manager, and it's not. it's not individuals as anyone that, fortunately does own any kind of, it's all in like mutual funds, which then have a myriad of companies under them.
That's right. That's right.
Unless you're going to do really now, it's interesting, but tobacco is on their list of the state.
The state actually gives the retirement board some authority to pick and choose about that.
And that's hard to do because, again, they could be mixed in with a mutual fund. But what about regular guns?
Well, see, that was interesting. It's part of the discussion.
It had something in the report about permit or something.
I know, but it was really, the order from the council was specific about nuclear weapon systems. Yet, so one of the councilors, I'm not going to name names here, but was sort of questioning about this, saying, is it true that 4% of the investments are in this? Well, no. I think it was a total.
No, it was a total. No. If you look at the 1% and the 0.8, if you add them all together, their exposure might be.
Yeah, but basically the point is if you have a company like Honeywell, which makes thermostats in my house.
I was going to say, they don't just make defense.
No, but some like
when I heard that, I said, wait a minute, Honeywell, they make fans, don't they? Teeny little bit of their business has to do with control systems. Yeah. And which might actually, be involved in weapon systems and whatever. So we're supposed to divest from Honeywell because of that? Anyway. We couldn't do that because we don't.
They really can't do it anyway. So it was an interesting little back and forth with one counselor.
How did it end up, though? I mean, was it going
in the end, I think it just stands. I mean, the thing is the council can basically make a request, but the retirement board still has to act in the best interest of the retirees, and they will. And the key word was the amount of investment in these activities was de minimis.
Yeah, I love that word, de minimis.
Yeah, it's a nice word. Worthy of italics. But it's funny because it's like a typical Cambridge thing. They make a big deal out of something, and it turns out to be like 35 cents worth.
But to be fair, I mean, people wanted the information. Do we invest in this, and how much is it? And they got the answer. Okay.
Actually, there was one little interesting interchange between two city councilors. I'll name it. So it was Councilor Mazin was the one who was sort of morphing it into a discussion about we shouldn't be involved in anything involving weapons or military. And then it was Councilor Kelly who says, well, I don't quite agree with that. Yeah, I'm okay with the military. I may not be okay with nuclear weapons, but let's stay on point, basically.
Right. Well, even actually Denise Simmons was more in support on.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is a little bit of politics and who you're playing to.
But I still want to know, if someone has the answer, is it already not investing in guns? I mean, Smith & Wesson is.
Anyway, we got 5 seconds left, so we're going to take a break.
We'll go back to that.
We'll be back in 3 minutes, 3 whole minutes. Bye.
Bye.